If you're an author and you're thinking about self-publishing or trying to decide between self-publishing and traditional publishing, then today is a great day for you to join me. This is the Coffee and Kidlit Show, and I'm so glad that you have joined me today. I have a very special guest that I'll introduce in just a minute, but the Coffee and Kidlit Show is all about me talking to different children's book authors who have published books that are just really inspiring and bring such great stories. And so if you like that kind of content, I hope that you will join me. I hope that you'll hit that subscribe button and follow along. We're going to have a great discussion today. And today we are with Karla Clark. Karla, thanks so
Hi
much for
there.
coming on the show.
Good morning. Good morning to Norway.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. Like she said, I'm in Norway and Karla is in Illinois.
Right.
So a little bit of a time difference here, but that's usually the way it is for me.
I,
um, so this is a live show that I have every week called the Coffee and Kidlit Show, and it's called that because it is a morning show. But I also like to ask some fun questions about coffee, and Karla has hers. I have mine here, but mostly it's about children's books. And Karla is a children's book author. She has experience with both self-publishing and traditional publishing, as I understand it. And so we're going to have a great discussion today. But before we get into that, I have some very special announcements about my own books that I want to give you. My first book, Ada and the Helpers, which I have here, is actually inspired by my daughter who is deaf. And so it has a character with what are called cochlear implants, which are kind of like advanced hearing aids. And the book introduces the ASL alphabet. September happens to be Deaf Awareness Month. So it's a very special month for Ada and the Helpers. And so I'm offering this book and my new book for 25% off on my website all month long. And you can go to launchmissioncreative.com/shop. Actually, adasfriends.com may be an easier way to get there. And I'll put that in the description later. But 25% this book as well as my new book. And while we're talking about that, I wanted to show a very special video because my brand new book just finished publishing or printing today. And I have a short little clip that I wanted to show from my printer that just kind of shows off the book. This book is called Never Ever Build a Blanket Fort. There's not really any sound to the video, but she's just showing the printer is just showing the cover here with some spot UV. These are the end sheets inside. The dust jacket converts into an Armor of God poster. So it is kind of like a faith-based book. Talks a little bit about the armor of God. And then we get into the story of Never Ever Build a Blanket Fort. The main character also has cochlear implants, the sister of the sibling couple. But that's not really discussed in the book. It's really just a fun story, fun, imaginative, adventurous story. And so this book is finished printing now. It is on its way to me here in Norway, as well as most of it on its way to the United States very soon. And I can't wait to have it in my hands. It should be ready within a few weeks to ship out to my pre-orders. Oh, there she is. She's come back now. I have a low connection. It may be me, actually. So if there's something wrong with the connection, just let me know and I will figure that out.
Okay.
Karla, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can go to launchmissioncreative.com/shop to check out my books. The first book, Ada and the Helpers, is also on Amazon, so you can find that in the description. Karla, now we're back to you. Thank you so much for joining me. Can you just give us a little bit of an introduction of you and your background?
Sure. So, my name is Karla Clark. I live in Rockford, Illinois, which is just northwest of Chicago. Born and raised here. I'm married. I have two sons. They're older. One is 34, one is 30. I know that's not possible. I was a child bride.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, it goes so fast. But was always a dream of mine. I remember when I was little, I would always answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be an artist or a writer. So I'm so blessed to be able to be both in my later years. So I got a degree in journalism. So I concentrated on the writing for many years, but I was writing commercially. I worked for a bank. I wrote their newsletters, things like that. I freelanced. I wrote pieces, newsletters and brochures and things like that for realtors. So I always tried to stay writing. And finally, when we bought our first IBM computer, how many years ago, I really got serious about writing a novel. So I always wanted to be a children's book writer, but in some ways it's more difficult, especially for someone like me that's very wordy and talks a lot. And, I take this long to tell a story that should be this long. So the novel seemed to be, suit me better. So I brought some props to show. So
Yeah.
I've saved this. This is my first novel that I wrote when I was 14. It's so bad. Look at I'm such a doodler, but different colored paper, different color ink. It's terrible.
What's the name of that novel?
I never even had a name.
You never had a title?
No, didn't have a title. But I was very, very influenced by S.E. Hinton, who wrote The Outsiders. And that's a book that a lot of high school kids read. Loved that book, and then found out that S.E. was actually a woman. And not only was she a woman, but she was only 16, 17 years old when she wrote the novel. So, very heavily influenced by that. So teenage angst, that kind of thing. But it got me putting pen to paper. I learned, how to write dialogue correctly. And it was great. It was great fun. So it was always my dream then to write a novel. So finally I did, and I published this one in 2003, called Between Courses, A Culinary Love Story. And I tried to get an agent, and it was crazy. Back then you had to send everything snail mail. And then you had to wait 3 months to hear back from an agent because they didn't allow simultaneous submissions back then. It was so onerous and difficult. And then the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding came out. And my book is very similar. It's kind of like My Big Fat Italian story. So I thought, I've got to get this book out. So right about that time, print on demand became popular, and I was friends with an independent book store owner in Dixon, Illinois. I was a pharmaceutical rep. That was my job for 20 something years. So I wrote on the side at night when the kids were sleeping. But he helped me. He said, this print on demand thing, it's a way for independent authors to get their book out. Why don't you do it? So I did. So I went through Author House, which is kind of one of the print on demand publishing houses that are now kind of flagged as to kind of stay away from. But I have to say, I had good experience with them. They were called First Books Library then. But this book, one of the characters writes a cookbook. And so all my family's Italian recipes are in this book. So it's kind of a book within a book. So this got me going, and how I marketed it, because really the internet was just pretty new as well. And there weren't these great Facebook groups and things like that. So I really marketed it by speaking at women's book clubs. I would advertise, I had a brochure, and I would advertise women's book clubs and women's groups to speak at their events. And it really took off. So it did pretty well regionally, locally. And so then while I was marketing that and working on that, I wrote a book of short stories, and I don't have one. I don't have that book with me right now, but it was called Knotted Pearls. So I wrote a little book of short stories. That one I just published in a paperback version. Short story collections don't sell that well, but it was fun to write, and it just kept me going because I just couldn't get in my head another novel at that time. Okay, so then I did write another novel. This one was called Annie's Heaven.
Yeah.
And this one is very spiritual. My nephew had passed away. My mother had passed away. I was thinking a lot about heaven and loved ones that had died. Where are they? Can they hear us? Are they, helping us? And this really helped me on my grief journey by writing it. And thankfully, it's helped many people on their grief journey by reading it. It's about a family. Annie is the mom. From the first page that she's died, she's in heaven, but it's a mystery as to how she died. And her 3 children and husband are left with this mystery unsolved. And they really are stuck. And she's stuck kind of in a level of heaven until everything can be resolved. But it's not sad. Well, parts of it are sad, of course, but it's a quirky family with quirky kids, quirky neighbors. And so that's Annie's Heaven. Then I think I mentioned to Travis, I have a son that has autism, Johnny, and he's wonderful. And he lives with us. He's 30 and he's pretty high functioning. And he's such an inspiration. He's such a gentle, generous person. So sweet. So when he was about 25, my husband and I met with an attorney and we created a special needs trust for him and also a family trust so that he'll be taken care of. But I was just wondering, what's he going to be like when he's 45? Usually I know Christina even said this, the human brain is really not mature till 25. So when he was 25, I thought, is this as far as he's going to get, in his maturity? What's he going to be like when he's 45? So that inspired this book, and it's called Everybody and Their Brother. And this one, Johnny was my inspiration. It's about a family with 4 brothers and a sister. They live in Chicago, and the brother Kip has autism, and the mother has already passed. And then right at the beginning of this story, the father passes. Well, who's going to take care of Kip? His sister, his twin sister. Okay. So this is their story. This is one of my favorites. So, and it was cute when Johnny would go to book signings with me. He'd also sign the book for people.
Now, is that a picture of Johnny on the cover, or is that
this actually is my brother? My brother Frank and 2 of his grade school friends. My father was a photographer, and so when we were looking for a cover, we found this picture and we liked it, so we used it. Yeah. So. Okay, so 3 novels and a book of short stories, and then started another novel, but also just wanted to get into the picture books because I love art. I love writing. A picture book is just the beautiful, perfect combination of both. So I have a cousin who is an artist, and I talked her into illustrating a couple of little children's books for me. Yeah. One was called Now I Lay Me Down to Dream. The other was called Once Upon a Camping Dream, with this little character. And she also created a little doll of this little character, really cute. But we did this on Amazon, it was called Create Space then. Now it's KDP. Right. So anyway, but these are out of print. We did this for fun, and it was fun. Well, then I decided, maybe I should think about trying to get an agent again. Maybe for the children's books, it might be different. So, and now you could do everything, through the internet, and you could submit electronically. It was so much easier. Agents did allow simultaneous submission, so you didn't have to wait months and months to get your rejection letters. So I had researched writing query letters, because that's really the key into getting an agent. A query letter. There's a science to it. So I wrote a little manuscript called You Be Mommy. And I always like to say picture book writing is a beautiful combination of remembering and imagining, because you're going back. And I have to go back a long time to when my kids were little, or to my own childhood. but you have to be able to remember. You have to be able to go back into that to remember what it was like to be a kid. And then you also have to imagine. So those two things are the secret sauce, kind of, So I went back. I started thinking about when my kids were young. And one of the most special times, and I know so many parents feel this way, is bedtime and reading those stories and just cuddling. And they tell you so much more in bed and when they're just relaxed and sweet. So we used to like to, especially for my first son, we were crazy. We would read 5 books, sing 5 songs, do prayers, where we would bless every single person we know. And it was a long, involved bedtime. That was with my first son, of course. Well, then with the second son, now you're juggling 2 and you're trading off. And so it got to be a little bit reduced, but we still made it very special. And we would try to start with books that were a little bit active, loud, maybe, and then keep going down to quieter books. So I was thinking about a quieter book. You start maybe with Where the Wild Things Are, and you end with Goodnight Moon, and you're just kind of bringing them down, those little steps. But every parent will remember how darn tired you are, and that many times the parent ends up falling asleep before the child.
Many times.
So I remembered that. I also remember a naughty book called Go the to Sleep that some guy wrote. And I thought that really hit a nerve with a lot of parents. But, of course it was naughty. It was meant for adults. It was satire. You couldn't read it to children. But I thought, it does strike a nerve. So I wrote a little story called, I first had titled it, You Be the Mommy. Sent it out to agents, and I got an agent, and they renamed it You Be Mommy, because when you're a child, you kind of take out those articles, you be mommy, you be daddy. So I got an agent named Connor Eck. He's with Lucinda Literary, which is kind of a boutique agency in New York, right in Manhattan. And I couldn't believe it because it just was a dream come true. I had tried for so long. And so we had an hour talk on the phone to see if we were a good match. We felt we were. So I signed on with him. And then he was newer, maybe a couple years into being an agent, trying to build up his client list. And I teased him so he's very much, I would call an editorial agent. He spends a lot of time with his clients because he's an excellent writer and editor as well as being an agent. So he really helped me to polish up the story, but didn't change it, at all significantly. So I teased him when we were ready to send it out to go on submission, as they say. I said, tell him I also wrote You Be Daddy. I hadn't written it yet, but I just was kind of teasing. I said, because I kind of saw this as a series. So a few weeks go by, we get a couple of bites. We got a bite from, I can't remember now. But anyway, they liked it, but they wanted it to be a little more humorous. So Connor said, let's stick with what we have. We love the story, but if you'd like, maybe do a different version that's humorous. See what we think. I did that. But in the meantime, then we got an offer from Feiwel and Friends, which is an imprint of Macmillan. And Jimmy Fallon is with Feiwel and Friends. So it's like that. But anyway, so my excellent agent did sell You Be Mommy and You Be Daddy. Sight unseen.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome.
So You Be Mommy is really a sweet little book that really helps a child to be empathetic with a mommy, with a parent that's tired. But in the end, so it's, you be the mommy tonight, because I used to play that with my kids. I'd lay there. I said, I am so tired. You be the parent. You be the daddy. You put me to sleep. You read me a story. You sing me a song. And they would. And then they'd laugh and laugh because I would pretend to be asleep and snore and all that. So it was fun. So we have You Be Mommy, You Be Daddy. I never can do that right. And then You Be Mommy came out in a board book, which was really fun because, the little book for the little ones is really nice. And then You Be Daddy will come out in a board book in May of 2023. So that's
nice. Great.
And then we continued on the series. My editor, Anna Roberto, who is wonderful at Macmillan, she ended up buying You Be Grandma and You Be Grandpa. So You Be Grandma comes out March 14th, 2023. And I did wanted to mention, because you mentioned that you have a daughter with cochlear implants. And in You Be Grandma, there's a character, I think she's a clerk at a store maybe, or maybe she's the librarian. And I noticed she has a little cochlear implant. So
okay.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So
when are they coming out? Do you have a dates for them?
You Be Grandma comes out March 14th, 2023. And I'm not sure about You Be Grandpa. So we just got the illustrator. We picked, she sent a couple of different versions of Grandpa, and we picked out the one we liked. And so that'll be coming out in 2024, probably. So we'll see. Go ahead.
I definitely want to talk more about the whole process of you finding the agent and getting published and all of that. But then we have the book, 3 Ways to Be Brave.
Right.
Such a beautiful cover. I love that cover.
I love this cover too.
Tell us about this book.
Yeah, this one's published through Random House, Penguin Random House, and they have an imprint called Rise. And it's really concentrating on preschoolers and really giving preschoolers some great skills. And so after You Be Mommy, You Be Daddy, I wrote a little story called Safe at Last. And this was also influenced by one of my children. This one was influenced by Johnny. He had just gotten into his big boy bed out of the crib. And there was a thunderstorm. And I told my husband, he had been in the bed like 3 nights straight. We were so proud. I go, thunderstorm. He's going to end up in our bed tonight. And he did. And he came in and wiggled in between us. And he laid down and he went, whew, safe at last. So I loved that. And I wrote a little story about that. It was very sweet. I pictured it as a board book. I pictured it very few words for the littlest of littles. And we sent it out and we get a response back from an editor named Cecily Kaiser from Rise Books at Penguin. She told my agent, she goes, I really love this little story, but it's very slight. And you really don't start with a board book. Usually a board book comes secondarily, or a publishing house does their own board books.
Okay.
So she said it's pretty slight. It'll be hard to sit on a shelf with other books. Would Karla be willing to write maybe 2 more stories? She goes, I've always wanted to do a collection of 3 stories for real little children and kind of get them into the idea of a chapter book or, that kind of thing. I said, of course I would. So we got on a 3-way call. She gave me some ideas of what she was looking for, which was real different. So this was very collaborative, whereas You Be Mommy, You Be Daddy, my stories, very little editing, off we went. This one was very different. She's like, the other thing I really want to, one of her goals with this book was to help children to be brave, but to search within themselves to find the bravery. Not so much to depend on their parent or their teacher. So my little story, Safe at Last, really depended on the parents helping that child to be brave by cuddling with them in the bed. Yeah. So she's like, rethink that. And then she said, come up with another story. And then she would make her decision about acquiring the manuscript. And then we could come up with a 3rd story after that. So I had been working as a pharmaceutical rep, and one of our medications was an injection that children receive. So I knew about shots, and I knew that children are so challenged by injections. And so I wrote a story about a child getting a shot. And then I wrote one about diving in or jumping into the swimming pool. But my agent thought, my editor thought that was a little too limiting, that a lot of children don't have access to pools, maybe in an inner city, or so she wanted something a little bit more universal. So in the end, we decided on a thunderstorm story, a first day of school story, and the doctor visit story. So
if you don't mind going through and just kind of share the
yeah,
main characters from the story and how did they show their bravery? We don't have to give away
right.
the ending, but
Oh no, that's okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first story, through the thunderstorm, is a little boy, and he goes to bed, everything's great. But then some clouds come, he's all tucked in, and then the rain starts and the dog barks and lightning, thunder, and he gets scared and he runs toward his parents' room. But on the way, he hears some sobbing from his little sister's room. And so instead of running to his parents' room, he runs to his sister's room, and she's crying and she's afraid. Well, he's the big brother. So by comforting his little sister, he finds his own bravery, because when you're helping someone else, we all know, and the focus is on that person, you're not so scared. And so I love that this little boy cuddles and ends up staying in his sister's room with the dog, and finding his bravery.
I really love the colors of this first story in the trilogy. It's a limited color palette, but
Yeah.
it brings the mood of the story so strongly.
Mm.
And what I kind of notice is, I don't know if you really notice it or not, but in the progression of the whole trilogy of the book, the colors kind of go from dark to light, and
Yeah.
it also kind of goes from very I don't want to say simplistic, but like a limited color palette, to a very bright and not
Yes.
busy, but a full color palette, and
Yes.
that's really
I'm glad you
really
noticed that.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me tell you a little bit about this awesome illustrator. His name is Jeff Oosterberg, and he lives in Sweden. He's from Sweden. He is so talented. He has had his illustrations on the covers of New York, the New Yorker, New York Magazine, Wired.
Hmm.
And he's done several book covers. They've been mostly like young adult or middle grade, but he never illustrated an entire book. And usually, as you know, Travis, a picture book is about 32 pages.
Right.
This, because it's 3 stories, is 80 pages. So what a challenge for this young illustrator, especially for his first book.
Yeah.
So it was a big job for him. We never spoke live, but we did email each other after everything was done. And I just thanked him so much, because just like you said, just the beautiful moody illustrations in this book, and his perspective, the way he looks at things from different angles is so neat and unique. And he was awarded with entry into what's called the Original Artists Show, I think, in New York. So he was this book
For
was
this book.
yeah.
So
that was wonderful. So the next story then is called First Day or First Day Jitters, I think. And then this one is about a little girl, and she's very nervous about going to school, and her daddy takes her to school, and her stomach is upset. She couldn't even eat breakfast. She tugs on his sleeve. Please don't leave me. It's preschool, and she's just scared. So then she sits down at her desk, and she sees another little girl who's sucking her thumb. She's so glum and scared. And then our little character says, "Oh, I see another little girl who's scared." And so she befriends her and decides, well, I'm going to help that little girl named Bree. And again, going inside, finding strength. I'll be brave so I can help someone else. So she befriends this little girl, and they end up playing together and have a great first day. So that's another way for our little children to find a way to be brave. Help someone else. Get the focus off yourself that you're missing home, and help someone else. And then I always love the saying that when you share your joy with someone, it multiplies. When you share your sorrow with someone, it's divided. And so she was able to divide her fear by playing with this other little girl. So
Yeah.
that was a fun story. And then that one, like you said, Travis, the colors get a little more varied, lots of pinks and a little bit more cheerful than what was in the thunderstorm story. And then finally, we visit a little boy who's going, I always do that, who's going to the doctor. And so when I wrote this story, I kind of used my own experience, what we as pharmaceutical reps would talk to the nurses about to try to help children that were receiving a shot. And a lot of what we did was distraction techniques. There's even been a study that shows if a child coughs kind of, powerfully right when they're going to get the shot, that it doesn't hurt because they're thinking about their coughing. So there's these different distraction techniques. But my first version went back, my first draft went to my editor, and she's like, but we need that they're still depending on the nurse to help. What could we do to find more bravery inside? And so we came up with some guided imagery. You're still having an adult help you, but that child's going into his own brain. So the nurse says, think of something that you like. Think of something that was fun. Go to a nice place. Close your eyes in your mind. And so this child thinks about riding his bike, gets the shot, boom. We're honest. We do say it's going to feel like a prick. It's going to be quick, but it does hurt. I always believe in being honest with children. That shot hurts, but just for a second. And so then he gets a sticker. And I've heard from so many mothers that just love the last line in this book. And it's okay that I cried. Being brave means I tried. And really, isn't that what it is? Being brave is trying. Sometimes you don't get through it. Sometimes, but he and his mom, and he had his teddy bear, and he tried, and he got through it, and he got a sticker, and hopefully they're going to go get some ice cream now.
I love this last, just the airplane flying across the skies. Just a little finishing touch, that makes beautiful books. And
beautiful book,
yeah.
Now, it was kind of interesting because the UB series has some really cute end pages. And when I first got this book, it was just pink, just plain. And at first I thought, why? Because I love end pages. But I thought, no, it works. It works because there's so much going on that it works. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
Now, you told me a little secret about this book, a little Easter egg. Are you willing to share that with us?
I am, because I didn't even know. Let's see. Or wait, I think I did when we were going through the sketches. I'm going to find it. Sorry. That I noticed in this picture.
I can pull it up here.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. If you can pick up page. Yeah. Oh, they're not numbered. Yeah, there you go. So I had noticed when we got original, just rough sketches, that our little character here was in the preschool. And also I thought that looks like the boy from the first story. And so this little boy wasn't there. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool if they all went to the same preschool? And then we added this little boy. So then they added this little guy. So on that page, all their stories kind of tie together. And it's a nice way to show children, every person that you meet has some fear that they're dealing with. So this little girl was afraid of school. This one was afraid of a shot. This one was afraid of a thunderstorm. When I've read the story to little kids, then, I remember a little brother and sister, the little girl, she's like 3 and the brother's like 6. She's like, I'm not afraid of storms, but my brother is. And she goes, I love storms and he's so afraid. And yeah, he was really happy about that. But, and then another, this little girl loves school. She races off. She has no fear of school. And then the other child does. We're all afraid of something. We all need to dig deep within and find our bravery. So that's what this story was about. Yeah.
We have a little comment, and if anyone is watching, they can leave a comment and ask questions. We're going to have a lot of talk about self-publishing and traditional publishing with Karla, but we do have a comment from Book Reviews by Finn. She says, your books all sound amazing. Love the brave theme of all these books. Can't wait to read them. This is Carly Valentine. I had her on the show a month or so back. So, yeah, they really are amazing stories. Beautiful book. We're going to have a little bit of a lightning round now. And these are questions that I didn't give you, but I like to ask all of my guests. First of all, when you were a kid, what were you afraid of? Since it's a book about bravery, what were you afraid of?
All right, I'm going to be very, very honest. I was afraid of dying.
Yeah.
So my dad, we're a big Italian family. My dad had tons of brothers and sisters and cousins. And so many of my dad's siblings died early on when we were young. My one aunt died of breast cancer at 40. Her sister died. She went for a checkup at her doctor's and had a stroke on the table. So when I was little, I was going to funerals all the time. So it was very strange. And then I thought my mom was going to die young because my aunt died young. So I was very afraid of dying, death and dying. Yeah. And had to work through those things. I remember one time, this was me, big warrior, big imagination, but I'd gone to bed and it was summertime. So we had the windows open and the curtains open, and just the wood on the window looked like a cross. And I thought it was a sign that I was going to die. I was like 10 or something. I don't know, not 8, 9, 10. So I went down to my dad. I go, Dad, it's a sign I'm going to die. And he goes, well, are you sick? And I go, no. He goes, usually you don't die unless you're sick or in an accident. You're up in your bed. You're fine. So I had to work through that. But yeah, that was kind of one of my irrational fears, but it was based on, as a child, going to many, many funerals. Yeah. So,
okay. A little bit lighter. It is the Coffee and Kidlit Show.
Yes.
What do you like in your coffee, if anything?
Okay. So this is embarrassing. And my son can't believe it because he has a French press and he makes really beautiful coffee.
Yeah.
My husband and I drink instant coffee.
Yeah.
I guess I don't really like coffee that much. I'm not a real connoisseur, but I like something hot. I like tea. And my dad used to drink instant coffee. And so I'd have it for him when he was here. And so we just started drinking it, and we do have lots of hazelnut cream in it. So we're just like fake coffee drinkers. But I got my coffee. I love my Van Gogh mugs.
Well, I've told other authors I've had on the show, I started drinking coffee pretty late in life, you might say. I started with the really sweet Starbucks type drinks. And then it wasn't until I moved to Norway that I said, okay, I can't get those expensive drinks anymore, and started drinking coffee every day. And now I have 2 or 3 cups a day.
I've heard that coffee's good for you. So that's good.
Yeah.
You can do it.
So, Karla, what was your favorite book as a child?
I always loved Dr. Seuss as a little child. And then I loved the Beverly Cleary books, Beezus and Ramona and all those. And then as a young adult, then I loved The Outsiders and those books. And as an adult, my favorite author is Ann Tyler. And she wrote many, many novels, but my favorite one is The Accidental Tourist, which was made into a movie. Many of her books have been made into a movie. She's wonderful, wonderful. She's my idol. So, yeah.
And I know your kids are in their 30s. Do you remember the last children's book that you read to them? Or one of their favorite ones?
One of their favorite books was called Slither McCreep and His Brother Joe. And it's about 2 snakes, 2 siblings, and they fight. And then Slither swallows his brother's toys. Oh, it's the cutest book. I love that book. And I do still buy it for friends. Slither McCreep and His Brother Joe. It's still available on Amazon. I think it was from the 1990s or something, but really sweet book. But they loved the Berenstain Bears. They loved all the Dr. Seuss ones. I don't know, we always had lots of books, of course. And Johnny, my younger one that has autism, he loved any construction books. He liked
Mm.
concept books more, which is kind of, goes along with autism sometimes.
Mm.
Jordan, then he got into the Goosebumps books, which I wasn't a real fan of. But then when I talked to his teachers, they said, whatever books the kids want to read, we let them read it. It's getting them reading. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
he's a real reader. Jordan's a real reader. He likes a lot of science fiction. Johnny liked the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, lots of books.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask about the whole process of finding an agent, but like you mentioned before, you do have some books that came out previously that were self-published. And I'm wondering, before we get into that, how difficult that was, because you kind of started that in the very beginning stages of self-publishing, like you said. And I'm wondering, was it really like an uphill climb to market your book and get it out there and to sell any? Did you have any success with that at all?
Limited success, but I didn't know anything about like Amazon and Amazon ads. Instagram
Mm-hmm.
wasn't around. TikTok wasn't around. I mean, YouTube wasn't around. And I do have a background in journalism marketing. And so if I started now, I think I would have a lot more success,
Yeah.
But I had no idea, so just put them out there and just really tried to do a lot of speaking, at groups and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have another novel that I've written, send it to my agent this winter. And he loved it, but it's way too long. He goes, you have 2 novels here. And I knew that because I tried to write this one was kind of an ensemble, and it's too much. So I'm going to split it into 2 novels. That's my winter project.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So, yeah, talk to us about finding your agent and tell me his name again. I've forgotten his name.
Connor Eck.
Connor
Wonderful
Eck. Yeah.
agent, Lucinda Literary. So I used querytracker.com, which is a nice resource. I know there's several other ones to find agents. So I thought, okay, identify agents that are accepting submissions for picture books. So first I identified I made a list of 100 agents. And then I drafted the query letter. So that, as I said, that is almost harder than writing the book because you just got to do it. It's got to be perfect because they get so many, right? So I'm stealing this and I'm sorry, I don't know who to attribute it to, but it was the best little hint that I got in my research on writing a query letter because there's tons and tons of advice. But this really helped me. And it was use this little tip. Hook, book, cook.
Okay.
You start with a hook. You've got to have a pithy hook. And then you tell about your book. And then you tell about the cook, which is you, which is the author. So hook them, tell them about your book, tell them about yourself, and get out.
All right. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep it simple. It's got to be 1 page. I'll give you a few tips. And I do help authors I've helped several authors that have self-published that want to make the transition to draft query letters. Cutter told me he said your query letter was near perfect. So just tell you that. But so a nice pithy hook in the beginning. It could be a piece of trivia. It could be a question. Something interesting that catches their attention. And they call that the elevator pitch. Like if you were going to go to Hollywood and pitch your movie, you got to have 1 sentence. And, sometimes for a movie, it's so-and-so was so-and-so until such and such happened, So a great pitch. And then your query letter needs to tell your word count, your genre, And then agents want to see a couple of what's called comps. So comparable books. So books that are in the vein of your book, in the same theme as your book, and they'd like them. I've seen as much as 5 years, but my agent likes more recent books. So more recent comps, about 2 years.
Mm.
And this tells the agent that you have done a little research, that you know what else is out there about your book, about your subject, and that you know where your book would fit in. And that's very difficult also. Now, those books need to be traditionally published, and they should have at least 50 reviews.
I've also heard this not a good idea to give comps of books that are like extremely iconic.
Right.
Is that,
you don't want to
that?
use Goodnight Moon, and you don't want to use, exactly. But so that's important to show the comps. And then you'll want to tell, a little bit about yourself. Agents are looking for a writer that they could have a career with, so they don't want just a person that's just one-off book. So they'd like to know, I'm submitting this manuscript. But I have several more. What else? A question that a lot of people have when you're querying an agent is if they have either illustrated it themselves, their book, or have hired an illustrator. So it's completely different from self-publishing a picture book and traditional publishing. So publishing houses, they hire the illustrator for your book. An author has no control. I shouldn't say no control, but for example, for You Be Grandma, I think my agent submitted 5 illustrators that she liked to me and said, rank these and we'll see who's available, because you could fall in love with an illustrator and he or she's not available for 2 or 3 years, something like that. That's happened.
So you actually were able to kind of give a little input on which illustrator they hired.
Yes.
Okay.
And we got our choices. So I've got, because I wondered when we did You Be Mommy and we had You Be Daddy, if it would be the same illustrator, but they've chosen a different illustrator for each book, but the art department, it's guided that illustrator to stay in the same, format, kind of structure. So that's been nice that they've been different illustrators, but they do blend nicely. So
yeah, when I was preparing for this interview, I noticed that they were different illustrators, and I wouldn't have noticed it before, just glancing at them, because the style is very similar. So,
it is similar.
Yeah, that's good.
So that's interesting. And then, we, as an author, you do get input. So what you'll get then is you'll get initial sketches, which is, they're all digital, but they look like pencil sketches. And I had a few on You Be Mommy that I just thought, oh, maybe the mommy's eyes should be closed here, or maybe that, just little things. And they work with you very, very well. You Be Daddy, there were a couple things too. And they're real open. Everybody wants this book to be best. So a little bit different when you're self-publishing and you've hired an illustrator, you've contracted that illustrator, and you direct them as to, what you want. You're kind of the art director. You have total control. It's your book. It's all your choices. So if you move to traditional publishing, you have to embrace and understand now you are in a collaborative environment. You've agreed to say, this is my story, but I'm going to work with you and we're going to make it great. And we're going to get lots of different people touching it. You have to be willing to do that or it's not going to work. You have to give up a little control. I'll give you an example for You Be Grandpa. I have a line in that book, because it's another rhymey book, that says something like, Grandpa's too tired to go to bed. Give him a kiss on his bald, shiny head. Well, then when we got sketches back, which was interesting, the illustrator, read the story, but probably forgot that line. And she came back with grandpas that have full heads of hair. Well,
That won't work.
that won't work. So I I thought about it. Okay, we could have her redo it for a bald grandpa, but I fell in love with her grandpa that's kind of a little bit of a hippie in a way, kind of longish, longer gray hair. And he was a little chubby and I just loved him. So I didn't want to change him. He was grandpa. So I was willing to change my line to say kiss me on top of my old sleepy head or something instead of bald sleepy head. So I gave a little, but you know, it didn't hurt my story.
That's really interesting. I didn't realize that once you sort of sell the manuscript to the publisher that you could have so much input with the artwork and all of that. I thought it was kind of like once you sell it, then you're sort of hands off and they run the show from there and make all the decisions. So that's really cool that you're able to be involved in that.
Yeah.
I've got another question
Yeah.
from Carly or from Book Reviews by Finn. I want to use her YouTube name because she does have a YouTube channel. Do you think it is considered a negative thing to traditional publishers if you illustrate your own books? Would you send a sample illustration in your query if that was the case?
Okay, that's a great question too. And we featured one of Carly's books on National Be Brave Day website, so we can
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know Carly is an author illustrator. So if you are an author illustrator, agents are interested in you.
Mhm.
And there's one in Chicago. I really like her a lot. And she only works with author illustrators. Her name is Lori Kelly from LK Literary Agency. And so if you are the author illustrator, one of the best things to do is, of course, you're going to mention that in your query letter. And then I would include a couple of examples, a couple of pages from your story. I did help, and I won't use his name right now, but I did help one of the authors in the Facebook group that we're in. He had posted an illustration that he'd done, and I reached out to him. I said, "Oh my gosh, you blew me away. Do you have an agent?" "No." How are you going to publish your book? You're going self, you're going traditional? I don't know. So we had a phone call and I just said, my agent was actually telling me that he was looking for a client that was an author illustrator. He thought that would be fun. And I said, well, this is the guy. So he'd already completely illustrated the book. So we got him in touch with my agent. My agent took him on as a client. It was so fun.
Right.
I just loved it. It gave me a big thrill. But I told him, I said, now listen, you've got to be open to a publisher saying, well, I love it, but you might have to change some of your gorgeous illustrations.
Mhm.
And luckily for him, I think it was only a few pages that he had to change because his illustrations were so wonderful. But for his next book, he will only send a couple of samples, so that this doesn't happen because they're so detailed. So a couple of illustrations to show your work, to show what you can do will be helpful. Now, there might be an instance where an agent says, hey, I love your work. I like you. I think we're a good fit. I'd like to take you on as a client. However, I also love your story, but your artwork maybe isn't up to exactly, it's great, but not, so let's submit this book without your illustrations, then you make a decision. If you're not willing to do that, self-publish. If you're willing to do that, then you go that route. And then maybe when your book's acquired by a publisher, you could say, hey, will you take a look at my illustrations? I did illustrate this book. Maybe you'll be interested. You never know. So there's ways to go. But another thing I've seen authors maybe do a little something that might be a negative is in their manuscript, then they add so many art notes. Sometimes you have to have an art note of what's happening in the illustration or what you think should be happening. You just have to. But in the beginning, when you're sending your manuscript, you should have no or just a couple of art notes, and that's it. Later on, when your book's acquired, you can have a discussion with your editor of, what you kind of thought of and that kind of thing. So that's a big mistake, to have tons and tons of art notes in parentheses, boy stands with dog, or, no, you've got to give the artist some creative space. So that's something.
Yeah. And like you said, I have noticed some agents as well as publishers who are starting to prefer the author illustrator combination. So I think there's actually a bit of a advantage for those who can do both, to seek out agents for that. Thank you, Carly, for your question. She does ask another one that I'll try to bring up later in the show,
Okay, sure.
As kind of flows with the questions. But if you're watching this live and you have any questions, please leave a comment, and we'll talk about it here. And if you're watching the replay, I know a lot of people watch the replay. Be sure to leave a comment, because Karla and I can both be watching the comments there and answer those questions.
And hit subscribe. Hit subscribe.
Hit subscribe.
Travis's
Thank you.
show.
Yes.
It's fun.
Yes. I'm only at 46 subscribers, and I would love to eventually get to 1,000 subscribers. And that's kind of the benchmark for YouTube channels.
Okay,
so
good.
I really want to get there. So please subscribe if you're watching. Help me out. Anyways, so we were talking about you finding an agent and signing on with the publisher. What was kind of the time frame for that, from writing that first story, You Be Mommy, and actually finding that agent that you have, as well as the publisher?
So 2018 is when I started sending out query letters. Got lots of rejections. You have to have a thick skin. I'm working with some authors right now, and they keep texting me, I'm getting rejections. If you get a rejection with a personal comment, that's golden. I do have an author I'm working with that got a really nice paragraph back from an agent that said, I love this story. I love your writing. The story was a little predictable. Would you be willing to maybe, look at it a little bit differently? And she is. So she's working on that. And now I forgot the question. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
What was the timeline for finding the agent and the publisher?
That's the other thing. Traditional publishing is slower than snails. It's really slow. And then the pandemic really, and all the shipping issues and the ports, the problem at the ports really slowed things up. I did have a delay in a month's delay in the launch of 3 Ways to Be Brave, but it wasn't too bad. A lot of people had worse things, but it's very slow. And partly because of the illustrations take so long, but partly because big publishing houses have catalogs. And so they decide way in advance, what they want to publish. So they'll have a spring, and a fall and whatever. And so it's got to fit into their time frame. And then also there's also books that are timely for holidays, Christmas books or whatever. Mine were around to be launched around Mother's Day, Father's Day, that kind of thing. We tried to get 3 Ways to Be Brave out before school last year, but the pandemic had delayed it, so it was September. But it takes about a year and a half from when you first get an agent, and then they submit your story. You wait a while to get your contract signed. Because that goes back and forth. Your agent represents you and negotiates the best possible contract with an advance, that kind of thing. And then you wait and wait for the illustrations. First you get the sketches, then the colors come back, and then the finals come back. Now, for example, You Be Grandma has been done, completely done. I think I just okayed the cover not too long ago. So it's been completely done. And it's September, doesn't come out till March. But the other thing that's different about self-publishing versus traditional publishing is that the publisher sends out advanced readers copies, ARCs they call them. So it's a soft cover, and it says not for sale, advanced readers copy. They send these out now. I don't know if they're doing them, if they're doing physical copies again, because during the pandemic they just started doing it digitally, which to me makes sense. But for most of the time, that was always a little paperback of. So the purpose of sending advanced readers copies out, one is to, identify any errors, or even if there's not grammatical errors, maybe there's a sensitivity error for some, population. And then also they send them out to bookstore owners, librarians, teachers, all over, to build up the buzz as well. So those, I don't know when they'll start going out, but several months before the launch. So you get that, which is really wonderful, because some people know it's coming.
I actually worked in I worked in Christian retail for over 7 years, and so I got to see a lot of those ARCs come in, and it was kind of exciting to see one come in, like from your favorite author, and get that sneak peek at their new book that was coming out.
Right.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about publishing and how long it took. It is a long process. Could you give some of the pros and cons of traditionally publishing, and maybe how that compares to self-publishing, because you've been fortunate enough to do both? Could you just compare them a little bit?
Sure.
What's your input there?
So, and they do have benefits each way. They really do. But my dream was always to get an agent and to be traditionally published. However, I know some authors that do both, and for different books and different for different projects. But so one, it's control. You have more control when you self-publish. You have a little less control when you traditionally publish. You have to spend a lot of money, of your own money, up front when you self-publish. Some people do Kickstarters, or some people go into their own savings. You've got to pay for those illustrations. The danger is, not paying enough for beautiful illustrations sometimes, and that really, will bring your book down a little bit. Let's see what else. But again, you've got the control. Another advantage of self-publishing over traditional is that a self-publisher, when you upload your book onto Amazon, you can then offer your book, the ebook, free, to try to generate reviews and get interest in it in the ebook. You can't do that with the big publishing houses. Don't give their ebooks for free ever.
Right.
So one thing you'll find is, if you look on Amazon, a lot of the self-published books have more reviews, because, as you know from our group, we people help each other out and try to review each other's books, and that's great. That doesn't happen with a traditionally published book, so they'll have a lot fewer reviews. So that is interesting. Let's see what else. So a self-publisher can do a lot of Amazon ads. I know there's a few people in the Facebook group that are really good at Amazon ads. Some that I've talked to, they spend thousands and thousands and thousands. They might spend $20,000 to get, or $10,000 to get $20,000 in sales. So, I mean, it's worth it, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't spend any money, except if I'm launching. I might do a Facebook ad or this or that. So you get a lot, you get a lot of support. I have a publicist from each company that helps me, and set up a lot of events and things like that. So that's nice, because you have your own publicist as well.
Is that assigned to you, or did you have to find a publicist yourself? Or?
No, assigned to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've heard that one big difference is, or maybe not a difference, but a similarity, is that you have to pretty much do all the marketing yourself, whether you are self-published or traditionally published. So that's interesting that they would assign a publicist to
Oh
you
yeah.
to help you
And
with that.
those are the
Yeah.
big, those are the big publishers, because Random
Okay.
House, Macmillan. Because like I think Christie might have hired her own,
Mhm.
different publishers. But then I think she did get one too from Pessy. But yeah, it's different. But yeah, I was fortunate. And then they really do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. But of course, they do expect an author to do a lot of I try to do a lot of Instagram stuff, a lot of, you got to do a lot of stuff on your own too.
Mhm.
But they're there to help you. And so that's really kind of nice too. So, yeah. And then the other thing is if you self-publish, then you've got to decide about, are you going to have 1,000 books delivered to your home? Where are you going to store them? Is your basement humid? Storage is an issue. I know a lot of people use the oops, now I forgot what it's called. Jay's group, the IAPC or
IAC, yeah.
Yeah. And he warehouses and distributes for a lot of authors. So that's been a nice service for them. So they don't have to have them in their home. So the other thing is a self-published author can make more per book if they publish, if they print them cheaply. They can probably make more per book than so it's just different. It's different. Yeah.
Yeah. You can make, you have a higher profit per book self-publishing.
Right.
If you have it printed offset overseas or something like that.
Right.
But if you are published through like a big five, you would have many more books printed and would hopefully earn the royalty on those books eventually. And you get an advance.
You get your
begin
advance,
with,
then
right?
you have to earn back your advance, right? And then you start getting your royalties, right? And again, you might make more as a self-publisher, but you're not going to get the reach. You make less as a traditional publisher because there's so many people that have a stake in that, but you get the reach. For example, UB Mommy, we sold the rights to a publisher in Brazil, and so that's going to be printed in Portuguese. I think in 2023, so that never would have happened, if I had published it myself. So there's just, but I always say, make your dream come true. If you're an author, and you can start, if your dream is to traditionally publish, there's no problem with self-publishing first. And look at some of the people in our group, that have only self-published and done super well. But there's so many different goals. Some people just have a story. They just want to publish this one story for families. Some people really want to make a career of it. I've been fortunate. I was a pharmaceutical rep for many years, and then I retired right before the pandemic and right before UB Mommy came out. So I'm able to spend full time on my writing and books. I'm also an artist. I'm not an illustrator. Big difference. I tried to illustrate a book, and it wasn't up to par. It was fun, but
it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. Yeah.
No,
so so those are some of the major differences, I think. But there's no right or wrong. You just have to know. You have to have reasonable expectations for each route. Is what I would say. Yeah.
Book Reviews by Finn has another question. I'm just going to read part of this to you. What do you feel you have done that has given you the best growth as an author since then? Since you wrote your very first book,
right?
The novel from the very beginning, because she was asking what that book was, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But what have you learned since then that has really helped you?
Very first book, it's 476 pages. It does include, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 pages of a cookbook, but it's too long. And what I've learned since then is better editing, and that you have to be able to slash. This should have been a shorter book. So if you look at the first novel versus the third novel, it was much better edited. Oops. Yeah. So I think that's what I learned, and how I grew as a better editor myself of my own work, because you have to be able to slash. So that's going to be a real interesting project when I hit my novel this winter and split it into 2 books. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, because they've already told you it's too long, so you have to
Right.
split it into 2 books.
Yeah.
You've been leaving some posts in the Facebook group that we're a part of about reaching out to influencers, and I think that had a lot to do with Instagram and about marketing your book, and you've had some really interesting points about that. So I just want to ask you about that and see if you could give us some tips about reaching influencers.
Sure. So my publisher does do that way ahead of time, and they will send out advanced readers copies or watermarked PDFs, for different influencers and mommy bloggers, that kind of thing, to review. So my publicist does do that. And then I'll do that also then. So she'll send me a list of who she's already approached, so we don't double the work. So what I've done, and a couple of tips that I have that I've gleaned from other people, is find some of these picture book influencers that you like, and follow them and comment and so they know your name and they know who you are, but be genuine. And I found some that I really enjoy and really respect. And so then when it comes time for you to reach out about your book, you have some kind of in. So what I've done also is, when I post things, if somebody likes it, because you can always go back, remember, and see comments. I'll identify maybe a picture book influencer that said, oh, that somebody else. Oh no, if I posted something, they might say, oh, that's a cute book, I need to check that out. Or if another influencer posted about my book and then they said, oh, that's a cute book, I might check it out. I go back to those, and when I'm ready to approach them about my book, and I might say, hi, my name is Karla Clark, I'm a children's book author. The reason I'm approaching you is you made a positive comment about one of my books a few months ago, and I thought maybe you'd be interested to know that You Be Daddy is coming out now. If my publisher sent you a book, would you be willing to take a look at it and maybe review it? So it's just it's a way to kind of break the ice a little bit, and so then I'll make a list of those people. I do an Excel spreadsheet of who I send it to and who responded, and I've gotten some really good results using that kind of approach.
Yeah.
I think you need to be honest from the start and say, if your book is self-published or traditionally published, I'll be very frank. Sometimes they might not be interested in a but your cover probably would help, tell that story if it's just, unfortunately, there's just so many self-published books that aren't good, but there's so many now. Oh my gosh, I can't believe the quality now. There are some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful books. I mean, you can barely tell the difference sometimes. So that's really a positive thing. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And there's other authors. There's a lot of authors that are also, I'd say, mommy influencers, book influencers. And so those gals are really nice and approachable. But don't just send a cover and say, hey, look at my book. I think that there's a nice, professional, polite way to reach out that has worked, because they get a lot.
I want to ask you about the National Be Brave Day, but before that, I just wanted to see if you had any last pieces of advice about for authors who are considering whether they should self-publish or try to find an agent. Is there anything that kind of sticks to your mind that you would advise them on right away?
Well, if your dream really is traditionally published, then start there. I would identify at least 100 agents, and I would query them. I'd give yourself, if you really want to go that route, I would give yourself at least 3 months. And then if nothing happens, then you can just say, okay, maybe I'll maybe I'll try a different route. But some people will just say, no, I don't want to go that route. I'm ready to go. I've got I've got a great illustrator. This Facebook group is so helpful. These different groups, all sorts of information, all sorts of coaches. You've got to have a good editor. You've got to have a good editor. I would say do not write a rhyming book unless you know how to rhyme and that you know meter. It's so precise, and kids have good ears, and so do parents. And if your rhyming is off, that's hard. So, but either way, just go for it. It's a thrill, isn't it?
It is.
It is a thrill. Yeah,
it really is. And it's kind of like getting a tattoo. You won't stop with just one. Now, I don't have a tattoo,
right.
So I don't know that for sure, but that's just what I've heard.
Neither I've heard that too, right? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you do get a bug. You get a bug.
Yeah, I had, it was never really an intention of mine to write a children's book, but it was inspired by this one right here, Ada and the Helpers, was inspired by my daughter. And after publishing this, then it's like, I have so many other ideas for books.
Yes. And the ideas abound. Abound. That's great. That's great. Yeah.
Now, I've had Christy Furnival on the show a couple of times now to talk about her books recently. And you and her have teamed up for something called National Be Brave Day, which is really, really cool. So tell us a little bit about that day.
Okay. So a lot of authors will find national days that relate to their book. And then it's a nice way to throw some content out there about your book. So for Mother's Day, I'll do that. For Grandparents' Day, whatever. For your book, maybe you do it for, a National Hearing Day, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually Deaf Awareness Month right now is September,
right.
And then we have Deaf Awareness Week, and National or International Day of the Deaf is later this month as well.
Okay, gotcha. So it's just a nice way to put some content out there about your book, in a nice, soft, gentle way. So I was looking up a National Bravery Day or something, and there was one for women that had been through domestic abuse, but there wasn't any kind of National Be Brave Day or Bravery Day for children. Mm-hmm. So I thought, I'm going to make one up. So I looked into that. All you really need to do is buy the domain name. And then I use Wix for my personal website. So I used Wix, and I thought, let's make a National Be Brave Day. Let's see what we could do. So then I knew Christy from the group, and I knew she had the Not So Friendly Friend, and I knew she was a mental health therapist, and I knew she was coming out with a book called Fear Not, which I thought would be great for the theme of bravery. So I reached out to her and I said, how would you like to partner? And she said yes. And I said, it could, it'll be right before you launch your book. And so she told me that May was National Mental Health Day month. So May would be a good time. I think I reached out to her in maybe January. So we didn't have a lot of time. So we picked May 16th because it'll fall on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for at least 5 years before it hits a Saturday.
Oh, okay.
And we thought by the end of the year, children would know each other in the classroom and maybe be a little braver with each other, and be interested in doing some of the exercises. So we created about 30 worksheets that are really nice. And we created a whole toolkit for teachers, librarians, social workers, school nurses, and it's free. Everything's free. We have it on our website where if you just register, then you get an email with all those beautiful resources. And then the teacher can decide how much they want to use, how little they want to use. We've got We've made forms to send home to parents so they know about the day. Schools could do whatever they want. They could have even a dress up as your favorite superhero day. And we are our inaugural year last year, we had, I can't remember now how many. Our goal was to have 25 schools sign up. We had double that, more than 50, 60 schools, I think.
Oh, that's awesome.
One thing we found that we were just a little late in the year. A lot of them have their curriculum already done by then. So we already have people that have signed up for this year because they could plan it a little better. So, so we really want to, I had our mayor, and we reached out to a couple other cities that proclaimed May 16th as National Be Brave Day. You can visit our website at nationalbebraveday.com. We were featuring other authors that have written children's books about bravery. We featured a little boy who was very brave, and we'd like to do more of that. So we need to build it up, but of course it takes time. And
Sure.
Christy and I are both so busy, but we're committed to this and to helping children find their brave. Yeah.
And I noticed on the website, I wish I had the website pulled up so I could show everyone, but I don't. You had some other books on there that dealt with the topic of bravery.
Yes.
How can some other authors who may see this get in touch with you? And
yes, because we'd like to keep adding them. So just go to the website, www.nationalbebraveday.com. And then I think there's a header that says books about bravery. And there's a place to register. We just ask for a small fee of $10 that goes right back into the National Be Brave Day campaign. It'll help us to reach out to the professional organizations. And so we've had I think we have 8 books maybe on there right now. And then we do send that list of books to teachers that have participated. So we hope to build that up and to help those authors' books get seen because they're great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they all tackle bravery in a different way, which is so neat, Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I just want to say that next week on the Coffee and Kidlit Show, I'm going to have Tayden Ray. She's the author of Cami Koala Makes a Decision. And it's a book all about Cami has this rhyme that she recites to help her make decisions. So that's going to be a fun conversation with Tayden. And so I hope that you will tune in to watch that. We'll be live just like we are now. And Karla, it's been so great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming.
I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for having me.
About your whole journey with publishing. Such a great topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And if anyone has other questions, I'll give you my email address. Just email me. It's Karla, Karla.Clark, CLARK @comcast.net. I'd be happy to answer other questions.
Great.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you. And one last time, 25% off my books right now on launchmissioncreative.com for Deaf Awareness Month. So, and I have a lot of great announcements coming today. Earlier on the show, I announced that my latest book has been printed. And so that's exciting.
Congratulations.
So thanks again. And we will tune in next week. We'll see you then.
All right. I'll be watching. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.